welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, wherever you are, bright and early here on the West Coast, if you're like me. I'm so excited to be hosting and moderating this panel today. We're going to talk about preparing for New Year's transformations. It feels like we're so rapidly approaching the end of the year. We just went from Halloween to the election. Now we've got Thanksgiving and the holidays coming up. And so many of us are contemplating, what does next year look like? How can we be successfully partnering with our CEOs and other partners throughout the business? And I'm excited to be joined by some incredible HR thought leaders and practitioners this morning who are going to share their expertise. So we'll welcome them to the webinar with us now. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I feel like I'm a little bit dark in a bunker here, but hopefully Oregon will lighten up shortly. I'm really excited to have you here. Anna, I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you to do a brief introduction, and then please pass it to the other panelists, and we'll dig in.
Thank you very much, Zoe. Good morning, everyone from the northern part of California. I'm seated in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco Bay Area, in fact. Before that, in many different parts of the world, Europe, Middle East, Asia, and Africa. My job is really sitting on both sides of our discussion today. I am a certified HR professional. At the same time, I do organizational change and design for the organizations. So very much enthusiastic about the topic today. My job is really to help organizations to change and become more excellent, more optimal in their operations. And I have a special place in my heart for doing that for the HR departments. With that being said, I would like really to get to Francesca Molinari, to share what she's doing with us. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Anna. Good morning and good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be speaking with all of you today. I'm Francesca Molinari. I'm delighted to be part of this panel and part of Hacking HR again. Just an hour ago, it was announced that I am in a new position, so thrilled to be the new Chief People Officer of Boomi, which is a global leader in integration and automation. So terrific to be with all of you, and I'll pass it over to Wayne.
Well, congratulations, Francesca. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. It's good to be here on another Hacking HR session, last of the year. My name is Wayne Tarkin. I'm an evangelist about Agile HR, using things that I adopted when I was in the IT area to use in HR to make it more efficient, more adaptive to the new world. Lately, we've been focusing more on AI. We teach a course at University of Pennsylvania, looking at developing the Agile leader and their organization, implementing AI. I think AI, there's a lot of hype about that, but it has the potential to really make an impact in organizations, not by the technology, but by the people side. How can we transform the way we manage and work with people? We often get afraid of the technology, which can be challenging, but my focus is really on the people side. How do we get people ready to adopt the change so that it can be more successful? I'm glad to be here. Without further ado, Renzi, you want to go?
Thank you, Wayne. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you're joining us from. So my name is Renzi. I am the founder and managing director of Perky People. I am currently based in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. I support organizations in a lot of culture transformation. I like what you're saying there, Wayne, when it comes to introducing technology, especially AI, when it comes to HR transformation, because I think, especially in this part of the world where I'm operating, more and more we're seeing a lot of implementations, but also people really embracing technology, particularly AI, into HR transformation. I'm really, really excited to be hearing from all of you also on what's happening from the other side of the world. So glad to be here.
Charmaine, let's hear from you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Charmaine. I'm the founder of Chapter 2, which is an organizational and people optimization consultancy. Prior to founding that, I built my career in HR. Actually went to school for technology, so love all things transformation, especially in the space that we're in right now in terms of AI and all the things that are changing. Really excited to be here today and to have this conversation because Transformation is definitely the word of the decade.
Absolutely. Thank you. And well, congratulations, Francesca. It's so excited. They're really lucky to have you. I want to start with you as a chief people officer and certainly somebody starting a new role today. This is great. What do you think is the most critical place for HR transformation that organizations need to prioritize as we're looking to the new year?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And my counsel is for the CHROs and the aspiring CHROs and those who are HR leaders of other varieties and titles on the call is to really start with your business objective. So, my long held belief is not HR transformation for the sake of great HR or HR transformation. So I take my guidance always from the objectives of the business. So as many countries and people are on this call is probably as many situations that each of us are managing with. Some of us are leaders of growth companies. Some of us are leaders of companies that need to contract. Some of us are doing one side of M&A and some will be on the other side of integration. Some will be going through high growth. Perhaps there's a lot of startups on the call. We've got companies that will be acquired or spinning off or going public. And so, my general counsel is rather than, and respectfully to the academic perspective and certainly the consultant perspective, it is important for us as HR leaders to take information, to understand where the industry is headed, to have conversations like this. But my first priority is in my counsel is to firmly anchor your transformation as an HR leader. And I will be doing the same 1 week into my new position in the objectives of my business. So Boomi has a very clear direction and very exciting direction it needs to go in. And so my people strategy will be perfectly dovetailed to that business strategy.
I love that. That's so great. So Charmaine, let's build on that a little bit. Your focus has been on human-centered solutions. How do you think HR leaders can effectively lead the change there within their organizations, the HR organizations specifically, and then their broader organizations as they dig in for next year?
Yeah, great question. I mean, building on what Francesca said, I really think it's important to first understand your why, because a lot of times people are just reacting and it's, oh, AI is transforming everything. Let's just do that. What does your organization need? Where is your organization? Why is your organization trying to drive whatever change that is? So when I think about it, I really think it's around what is the embracement, whether it's technology, whether it's a skill set development, whatever is identified as important and critical for that company, specific to their industry. That's the thing that, for me, really has to center what that transformation is going to be around. To Francesca's point, someone could be a startup. They could be, doing a management buyout. The business and what the business needs are should always drive that. So if I think about HR leaders and preparing, it's understanding what you need is the first step to preparing.
Yeah, I agree. Wayne, let's build on that a little bit. When, your focus and specialty being on agile leadership, what do you think are the key challenges in implementations of HR transformations, and particularly in this area where we're adapting to new work models as an organization?
Great question. I wanted to speak people where I'm having some connectivity issues. So if I start fading in and out, you'll know it's not me. They're doing some work around here, but I think there's about 6 or 7 key areas. I won't get into them all, but I think, as we have new work models, new technology, we have to really manage the people side of transformations. We have to balance, I guess, flexibility and structure on the one hand. When we implement, say, like a technology solution, it has to be very precise. Excuse me, 1 second. We're having more than technology issues right now. We have to balance the flexibility that comes with new ways of working with the structure that comes with a technology. So I think balancing flexibility and structure, building cross-functional collaboration. I talked to a lot of HR teams. They're still in silos. They have business partners. They have centers of excellence. They have services, and they don't really talk to each other. So I think that's one area. It's really about mindsets and culture. HR, we used to want to have it be perfect the first time, every time. But that's not possible. We have to have more of an experimentation mindset. We have to really try things first. It's kind of ready, fire, aim, as used to be ready, aim, fire. I think we have new leadership skills. We live in a world where we used to call it, instead of being a sage on the stage, we want to be a guide on the side. Our role is to help our teams be more successful rather than direct them. I think, technology, data, those kind of things are important. We need to have data integrity. Aside from biases, you're going to get incomplete information, wrong information. Francesca, I worked with Del Boomi, and I worked at IBM. And the challenges we had huge data sets. One company had 12,000 job descriptions in one file that had been accumulated over 20 years. And a lot of it was junk. And so imagine trying to integrate that with such bad data. So getting your data right is going to be a challenge. Again, compliance, risk management. We have privacy issues. We have compliance issues. So those are the key areas I think that HR lead needs to focus on. Not easy, but I think, in 2025, I think this will be the way to go.
I love that. Thank you, Wayne. So Renzi, let's build on that a little bit. When you think a lot about employee experience design, what strategies are you recommending for organizations and thinking about yourself to overcome some of these challenges that Wayne and others have mentioned?
Thank you, Zoe. I really believe that employee experience should be at the heart of any transformation, whether it's digital, HR, or business transformation. They should be at the heart of any transformation. The reason being is organization is composed of people. And if you don't look after the experience of people during transformation, they're the same people who's going to make or break your transformation. So when it comes to overcoming some of these challenges, transformation is not something that you guys are going to be embarking on only next year. And I'm 100% sure, I don't know in your part of the world, but where I'm operating, almost every year, organizations here are saying, we are transforming. Yes, although it is a journey, but it's also possible that whatever you said you were going to do differently last year didn't work out. That's why you're doing something differently next year. So we're embarking on different transformation. But the problem is not all leaders, especially HR leaders, are communicating why. Why do we need to transform next year? Did the previous transformation not work? Are we embarking on a completely new transformation because we're bringing in like AI, technology, robots completely into the organization? Because when you build your, when you clarify the why of your transformation, this basically creates buy-in from the people in the organization, but also builds on transparency. And then I think I like what Charmaine said about people centricity. When you're going through transformation, also design with empathy. A lot of transformation, they think, especially when they bring in new technology, new structure, etc., they forget that actually they're managing people. I've come across organizations where it becomes now a habit, like every year they make people redundant every December. So like now it becomes a habit, like, oh, people are fearful about December, when in fact December should be a year, like a time of the year where people should be enjoying, celebrating with family and friends. But because they don't really design with empathy, they don't co-create those experiences with people. People think that a lot of these transformation initiatives are parachuted on them at a specific time of the year. So work with people, get their feedback, run focus group, run workshops, work with them to really understand how can they help you. If you really are finding it challenging last year or this year, how do you move forward to next year? Work with them in understanding what else can we do differently. So at least you're an open book to your people, you're being transparent, and then most likely you'll get their buy-in from them. And then also the biggest thing that I've seen, at least where I operate also, is around communication. You could have the best strategy when it comes to transformation, but if people do not know the details of this transformation, maybe you don't have the details, but if you don't communicate throughout the year what is happening, I think ultimately a lot of these transformation initiatives are going to fail. So You can never over communicate during change or transformation. People need to know what is happening, whether it's happening, not happening, you're postponing it, you're delaying it, you're bringing something new. We have to over communicate. So thank you.
I love that. I think, as you say, the context and communication, that just provides clarity. It provides greater trust for folks within the business. And to your point, Rancy, then people aren't feeling like something's happening to them, something's happening together, and we're moving forward as an organization because they know what's going on. And it doesn't feel like something came down from on high and just all of a sudden they woke up and half their friends are gone.
Sorry, can I just add? I just remember
Yeah.
something. Also with transformation, most of the time I think people see it as the final destination.
Yes.
It is actually a journey. When you
Yeah.
transform, there will be multiple changes. And this is where iteration and, like experimentation and embracing failure, learning from failure is super important when it comes to transformation. Because if people are not in the same mind, in the same headspace, or does not have the same mindset as you, that it's okay to fail, it's okay to experiment, it's okay if we don't put out there the perfect version of what that structure or what that process looks like, but we will find out because I may not have all the answers for you. So I think it's important to embrace that iteration mindset during transformation.
Yeah, and to be a leader that shares their vulnerability and says, this was a mistake. I thought this was a great idea. It didn't work. Here's what we learned. Here's what we're going to do differently to build that, psychological safety so people can fail quickly and then move on to the next thing. Yeah, awesome. Anna, let's talk to you a little bit about this. What do you think organizations can be doing to create a really successful roadmap as they think about HR transformation, in 2025 and beyond, and obviously gearing up for it now?
Well, you could not really ask me a better question in relation to what I'm doing, because that's exactly what I'm doing. Well, let me say that, even when we build a house, we really create a blueprint. We really start with the architecture of everything. That's exactly where we should start with the transformation, the organizational transformation, especially more because we affect so many lives. And it's not only the lives of the people that work for the organization, but it's also those people that are affected by these people. So we need to be very much cautious and empathetic, as it's already has been mentioned. At the same time, we really need to have this iteration mindset. Let me say that it is very much important for any organizational transformation to start by making sure that you have the architecture of what you're going to do about everything. But most important, you really need to know that you go from which state to which state and what do you need in order to bridge the gap in between. That's why you really need to understand what are the capabilities that you're missing in order to go from A state to B state. If you don't know what are the capabilities that you're missing, you cannot build them and you cannot really provision for them. That is something that a lot of times is being missed. I would like also to add on the things that have already been mentioned. In order to make that change happen, you really need to have a very good assessment of what is the current situation regarding not only the state of the organization, but also the change readiness. So to what extent the organization is ready to change and what is needed to happen over there, not only on the aspect of capabilities, but many other aspects. For example, you might need a different kind of attitude. You might need a different kind of change leadership. And with that being said, another component that can make things successful is really understanding what is the impact. You need to make a good study, a good evaluation of what is the impact that is going to happen on every aspect of the organization because of this change that you're planning to. That means how the roles are going to be affected, how the reporting structures are going to be affected, how the relationships of the people are going to be affected, how the people are going to be judged for their performance, how the people are going to interact. Is there going to be any change in the behaviors, in the mindsets that people would require to have, and so many other things. With that in place, then you can start really creating the architecture of the change. And the architecture of the change goes from A to Z. it goes for everything, understanding what are your stakeholders, how they're going to be impacted, analyzing really their degree of influence, analyzing how you can really interact with the stakeholders, and then create a very, very detailed architecture of communication. Because communication is easy to be said, but difficult to be implemented if you don't have the right architecture. You really need to create a very specialized plan, as if you were building a huge, a huge building, in order to make sure that it will happen and it will affect positively the people that are affected by the change. And with that being said, I would like to say that all things cannot happen, and it has already been mentioned by all of you, if you don't utilize, first of all, data in a good way. You really need to, at every point, to have to make sure that you have the data that you need in order to measure the situation and act upon that. And I can bring examples. For example, we said about the employee experience, the engagement of the people. You really, at this point, AI helps in many aspects to understand what's going on. It's not only the surveys, the focus groups. We can also, I sit in an AI organization and we do a lot of work on that. It's also understanding what is the path. Having, for example, a sentiment analysis, understanding how people feel, that is so much important. Also, to what extent really things are being are moving on, are being implemented. And let me say that another thing that I would like to emphasize that has been said, with the mind of design thinking, you really need not to go for the whole of it. Start with the part that perhaps would be a less impactful failure. Start with that part and start changing that part first, because the learnings will have a huge positive impact to the whole change, but at the same time, the failure will not have a bad impact on the whole effort. So isolate a part that you can start with, and yes, iterate. Have the agility required in order to move fast. Make sure that you really work with all the different parts of the organization. Make sure that you really enable the people. One of the things that we say in any change model, I can tell you, is really remove the barriers for change. If you don't remove the barriers for change, people will continue really being resistant. And that is part of our resistance management and some other things. I can speak. I can speak.
I love this. No, it's super. I want to pull, Charmaine, I want to bring you into this because I would love to get your take on building on what Anna's just said. What do you see as the most critical areas for HR transformation that our team should be focused on? And maybe also, what do you think are some common missed opportunities that people have where you're like, look, if you could just do this thing a little bit better, it would be exponentially impactful for your organization?
I'll start with the latter. Communicating with employees and communicating with employees in the way that resonates with your employee base. Too often, communications start at this big strategy level and we have an entire plan rolled out, the bus is out front already and everybody else is moving forward. And the time that it would have taken to just take a step back to understand, what are the employees looking to understand? What have we had happen before? What has worked and what's not worked? Too many times we're focused on quick instead of thoughtful. And what employees are going to respond to is the thoughtful piece of it. It's change management 101, right? How do you build that awareness? And that's all grounded in communication. There's sometimes, I can think of so many examples of things where leaders of an organization thought, oh, we need to do X, Y, Z. And I'm like, let's just talk. Let's just find out. Or how do we solve this problem? And you talk to the employees and sometimes you find out, A, that is not an actual problem for the employee, right? The population. Or B, what they're really looking for is something different. So for me, it has to start with understanding how your employees need to be communicated to, what specifics they're looking to understand, and then creating an entire strategy around that. We do it the reverse too often, and I don't know why, because we have the same outcomes and then we wonder why, but it really has to be what does the employee population need to understand? What are they interested in? What are the things that they're going to freak out about? What are the things that they're not going to freak out about? And start in there. So for me, the most important thing is understanding what your population needs and then building a strategy in response to that.
I think that it's such a great point, because I do think sometimes by the time something's rolled out to the employee base, the leadership has been in it for a month, 6 weeks.
Mhm.
They're so over it and 2 things ahead, and everybody else is hearing about it for the first time. And we do zoom past the context, because we all did that 2 months ago.
And we
when-
don't give enough grace, right? Because
Yeah,
it's like the teacher who's been teaching something for 20 years and has a new class. It's new for them. It's not new for you. And if you don't take the approach of, I'm going to teach this as though this is my first day too, you're not going to have successful outcomes. And that's something I think every leader needs to be reminded of. And more importantly, I think it's something employees need to be empowered around to say, wait a minute, we're just learning this. We need time to adjust, right? We need time to adapt. And that's where there's the disconnect often, because to your point, it's been months. I think about this in the most basic employee surveys.
Oh yeah, I know.
Yep.
I'm not a huge fan of, that's another day, but you get the results, and as leaders in HR, you're going through all of that and you're parsing it, and then it gets delivered to the employees. And then it's like, okay, we're going to do this, and we're not allowing people time to digest what does that mean for them, and even validate for themselves whether or not that beliefs is true. And by the way, sometimes that information takes so long from the time it was delivered to the time it's presented. People are like, what was that about again? So
We've reorged twice since that's great. Yeah.
we really have to do a much better job of bridging that gap and communicating along the way and reminding people, right? My nephew is 4. I talk about him all the time to get him ready for bed. It's just not one time that we say it. Sometimes some kids, you're reminded constantly, because it's that preparation process, so that by the time it really is, no, you're getting in. It's no more debates. It's no longer talk to the system.
It sounds like you've been at my house for bedtime.
If I could add one thing.
Wayne, jump on in.
Yeah. Excellent comment, Charmaine. I think I focus on co-creation. I wouldn't, I can't tell you how many times and HR leaders come to me and they bemoan the fact that, they spent months on this project, worked really hard, they delivered it, and it was a dud. Nobody wanted it. Why? Because they did it HR for HR, and good intentions, but, this is a customer-focused world we live in, right? Your employees are customers, and get them involved. Get them involved with creating it. And the benefit to that is they opt in more likely, right? And it's more likely going to satisfy their needs. We also like a go slow approach. I was talking to the leader at a big company, and they were doing, I guess, a Workday or SAP implementation, and they got buy-in at the beginning. Everybody said fine. Then 6 months later, when they rolled it out, nobody liked it. Why? Because they hadn't involved people on an ongoing basis every day. So the nice thing about Agile, it requires you to communicate with your customers on a daily basis, right? You're responding to their needs, which could be changing. Things change quickly. A 6-month plan in, March of 2020 was obsolete by April of 2020, right? And so the same thing happens today. So you really need to kind of have a go slow approach. And that's tough. So a lot of leaders, are impatient. I want results yesterday. And when we talk about Agile, this is going to be messy. Let me tell you right up front. It's going to go very slow at the beginning, but it's going to go very fast eventually, and you're going to get what you want. But it's not an easy, it's not an easy proposition for people to understand. So that's why we, on this call and in the audience, we need to really focus on explaining the process. It's going to take time. We're going to learn. We're not going to get it right 100%. We have to spend that time fixing it by involving our customers and then moving on.
Yeah, thank you. Renzi, you were coming off. I'd love to hear your perspective.
I just want to build on what Charmaine and Anna said. Also, like Wayne, if I can maybe share a quick story. So back, I think it was in my previous life when I was working for corporate, like some few years ago before COVID. This is when I learned that communication is key, not only to any transformation, but to HR in general. Because as HR, we actually make and implement a lot of changes. especially now that we have AI. And now fast forward to 2024, and I'm working with different organizations. What I notice is we still didn't learn a lot as HR. We are still not good enough in communicating the changes. I think as HR, it has to be mandatory that we have to be best friends with marketing and communications team. If you don't have marketing communications team, you have to have a communication specialist within your team, because part of you building your people strategy, part of you putting in place your transformation strategy or transformation plan for the coming year is making sure that you also put in place, just like what Anna said, a communication architecture, your robust communication strategy, looking at the different communication channels, or maybe be creative about what other communication channels we haven't explored, so that we are targeting the different levels in the organization, the leaders, the middle managers, the employees, and everyone else, the factory workers, people, all these things. Because from experience, what I've noticed, leaders will communicate through email, it stops there. Middle managers, they will get a briefing from their from their line manager, it stops there, and they don't cascade it down to people below them to understand what does it mean for me. Because for me, I'm just encoding. For me, I'm just producing all the reports, but what does it mean? So what happens is there is a break in that cascade when it comes to communicating what transformation means to everyone. So I think be intentional in your transformation initiatives to really integrate a robust communication plan, partnering heavily with your marketing and communications team. So whether throughout the year or maybe by project, whatever modality you can work with the marketing team, make sure that you work with them really, really closely during transformation, because they're going to be a lifesaver for you. Because again, in transformation, the biggest enemy is perception, right? What you're trying to change in transformation is the old mindset. But most of the time, because things are not communicated properly, we have the glitzy, blinging AI technology, but people don't know what it is for. So perception is real and truth is false, because we don't communicate enough on what are we changing and why are we changing.
It's such a great insight. Oh, Francesca, I was going to ask you too to build on this. And I want to ask you another question too, which is coming in from the comments from the attendees right now. Claire made a really great point that sometimes the silos within HR, they hold us back too. So I'd love to hear what you have to say about Renci's point, but then also, can you talk a little bit about silos within our teams and how we can work to break those down? Because I think to Renci's point too, there's an opportunity there around a more cohesive messaging to our teams.
Yes, couldn't agree more. And thank you, Claire, for the comments and others for the comments as well. You know, I think our world professionally and personally has the collective effect of making us feel that whoever we are and wherever our organizations are on December 31st is entirely wrong. And, you know, it's new year, new you. And somehow if you were to look in social media or at the cover of a magazine, you know, in our personal lives, you might feel like you need an entire closet makeover, lose 10 pounds, you know, organize your everything. And we can often, I don't know if it's anyone else, but it certainly might be someone like me. You know, you somehow feel like as you enter in a new year, there's this tremendous appetite for revolution, for change, for something brand new. And I think we all buy into it, or at least I do. And pretty often I find myself burning out because I can't change everything all at once. And frankly, I shouldn't change everything all at once. And I think it's very exciting in our professional lives to kind of, you know, and they will start coming out. They're coming, you know, the 5 things all HR leaders must do in 2025, the top priority. You know, here's what I'd also offer. 3 things. Number 1, as you think about the things that you might be entering into your change agenda, what are your priorities? What are the biggest, most important? You're not going to be able to do it all, and you certainly can't do it all well. So what are the priorities, and what are the big rocks where if you anchor the change and the transformation where it's needed, you will actually align to the business transformation and hitting the business objectives that you need to meet? Prioritization. Number 2, what are the trade-offs? we don't do this without doing less of that or having a trade-off. So if we do these things and these priorities, what are we not getting to? And I think we have to not only normalize that, but understand that is the reality, and as leaders make that okay for our team. We have a tendency very often to just keep piling on and not removing from our collective desks. And so number one, prioritize what's going to move the needle. Number two, what is the trade-offs, right? If we do this, how do we do less of this or this differently? And then third, and maybe even most importantly, that gets little attention, what are we not going to change? You know, I usually introduce myself to new people by saying, I am a change agent and I have a tremendous appetite for change. I just took an assessment that told me I'm off the charts, but I don't change for the sake of change. And I don't break, or I try not to, what isn't broken. And so I think it's equally important that we are incredibly, incredibly editorial in what are we going to keep the same. And I see this a lot in mergers and acquisitions, for example. You just paid a lot of money for a company. How do you preserve the value of what you bought? What do you understand about the culture of the acquired company? And as you work on integration, you know, Wayne's used my absolute favorite word. How do we co-create something that takes the best of you and the best of you and creates a blended family, you know, if you will? So I do think, as we're talking about all these things for change, which always get me excited because I like a new school year, I like a new year, I like my fresh, you know, pens and pencils is probably more than anyone else. And I always like to dive headfirst into change, but I know I need to hold myself back. So for others who can get equally ambitious, I hope that thinking about prioritization, trade-offs, and what doesn't change is kind of a helpful framework. In terms of the HR silos, what a good call out. I think and I think we've probably, in the nuggets of what's been discussed by the other panelists, you know, hit upon the gems there. And what solves for that, it's communication and context. So, you know, I believe in when it comes to those who work on my team, an incredible amount of context, you know, maybe even eye-rolling amount of context sometimes. It's like, Francesca, wow, that's a lot. Just tell me what you need me to do. But I really believe that when we hire great people and enable them to do their best work, not just a task, but their best work, they need to have that change or that task or that work contextualized. And one of the ways we can break down silos is by having one arm of the HR organization understand what the other HR organization is doing on and sharing the context for the change. So, you know, going back to, you know, with the trade-offs, right? We've got to think about how changes impact the entirety of our organization. I think we can't be over communicative to the leaders on our teams and the team members on our teams. And I think a tremendous amount of shared empathy for, you know, the very real objectives that everyone has, and thinking also about the interconnected employee experience. We will probably never go wrong, and we will always do a better job of breaking down silos in our own organization if we put the employee in what I call the center of the room. So if we engender a team where we are all thinking about not great HR for great HR, but putting the employee in the center of the room, I do believe that enables a mindset where talent acquisition isn't just thinking about talent acquisition. The BPs aren't just thinking about BPs. Learning's not just thinking about learning. It is really up to us as CHROs to do our best to create a world in which everyone in our team is bringing their very real specialty and their very real craft, but also has a lens to the entirety of the employee experience journey and to everything that is within our HR market basket. You know, one of the things that is a pet peeve of mine, turns me kind of red, if you will, is when someone in our organization says, well, you know, I'm in talent acquisition, that's not HR, or I'm in compensation, that's an HR thing. You know, if you are in this world of something people, whether that be compensation, talent, I mean, we go on and on and on. I think we have the most comprehensive and complex set of subcategories in our world. But at least if you've been on my team or are on my team now, you know, you'll be hearing this a lot from me. You know, we are all part of the people function, of the HR function. And I expect that our employees on the team, you know, act that way. And it's my job as a leader to help create a culture where that's understood and we're thinking about the employee and the journey. So I hope that helps, Claire. And
It helps a ton. And I love that. We talk about that in our team too. Like we're all in the HR ship here, guys. A question that I have, and I'm wondering too, about some of the feedback we're getting in the comments is, and some of the comments we've had from the panelists here, given all this and the fact that we are very often, hopefully in partnership with our marketing colleagues, the face and the voice of change, where we may have influenced it, but we certainly haven't owned every piece of the decision, despite what many people might think. How do we take care of our teams who are the face of these transformations and changes and constantly getting questions and pushback in partnership with line managers too? How do we help our teams through that and prevent burnout and frustration and whiplash is something I hear a lot of colleagues, across LinkedIn talking about right now. To your point, Francesca, we did this all heavy and hard in 2024. And then January 1st, it's new year, new me. And we're going to do this other thing. And it's hard for our teams as well to constantly be the face of like, I'm rolling out a new program, I'm changing this. And no, we can't, despite what we say, that we should stop things. Not every company is great at stopping things. I think that's an Achilles heel of most leadership teams, bluntly, that it's like, we can probably just do a little more. So how do we do that? How do we take care of our teams? What can we do as leaders to really support them when they're on the front lines? And many times they're in these conversations that are sticky and we're not there. So I'd like to open that one up broadly.
Yeah, I would start. I'm drawn to the analogy of the flight attendant, where she says, in event of emergency, put your oxygen mask on yourself first before your child. And most of us will probably do our child first. But the reality is, if you pass out, then your child's not going to make it. And so, same thing in HR. Okay, we have to take care of ourselves, and we haven't done that in the past. And COVID, things like that. Floyd, recession, election. There's so much coming at us. We're focusing on AI a lot. And so if you talk to a group of 14 internal team of 14 HR practitioners, 7 are going to embrace AI and 7 are going to say, I'm going to retire soon, forget about it, I'm not interested, right? And so there's a certain fear with that. And so how can we reduce that fear? How can we demonstrate to people that this is going to be helpful to you and not unhelpful? It's not going to take your job away. And it's really communication. It's co-creation. You have to involve everybody in the process. If you have a team of 7 who are embracing it, and you have 7 that are reluctant, as you start to move forward in a slow but steady pace, I think a lot of those 7 who are resistant are going to get on board. They're going to see the benefits. People don't like to be left out on things. So when they see people embracing something, they're going to say, wait a minute, I better be involved here, so I'm going to miss something. So again, it's a slow and steady process. HR is changing. The skills that we have today are different than they were, 2-3 years ago. And some people, either change people or change people. I've heard that term. It's kind of harsh, but in reality is the profession is requiring different skill set from people. And so again, upskilling is real critical. Spending time, sending HR people to workshops, seminars, having a continuous learning environment in HR where people continue to learn about different things. I think those can kind of create more engaged HR team and people focusing on, how do we build this together? How do we deal with our customers? How do we just, avoid burnout, but also, empower ourselves? We feel passion and energized by the work we're doing, which is important.
Go ahead, jump in, Renciana.
Yeah.
Well,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that in continuation to what Wayne has contributed to this discussion, if we really want to avoid this change fatigue, we need, first of all, to acknowledge that. We really need to acknowledge that it exists. And the second thing is really to lighten up things. Make sure that our prioritization really helps us put first those things that really must happen in comparison to the others that are nice to. And if you don't have that ability, you can still really put in front those things. But I would like to say two important elements that can help really avoid situations of change fatigue. And one is having specific KPIs for the change. Measure the change, how good or how not good is going, the progress of the change. Why? Because this does not only help with the communication with everyone impacted, all the stakeholders, but it also helps your team. They can see the progress of their work. They can see that they can really affect things. They can make things happen. That is so much important. The second thing that I would like to emphasize, it is so much important to make sure that all these things that we're talking about, communication, to be embedded in the way that you operate as an HR department and as an organization. Because otherwise, you can't do it. And in order for that to be embedded, means that you really go out and design for that before you do anything else. When you really take over a department, when you really take over a change, the first thing that you should do is really put over there the design, the plan, the strategy, whatever you want to call it right now, but you really put it down and make sure that you put the players on that and then start doing things. For example, when we want really to avoid this silo situation or having that fatigue, and I would like to give these two practical examples because I know that a lot of HR people that might be attending this discussion might be in a department of just one HR person. It might be a small organization. They might not have a communication department at all. So let me tell you guys that there are two practical things that you can do. One is really create a coalition of the sponsor of the change with those people that are sitting next to that person. It could be the peers of the sponsor or could be the direct reports, and make sure that this kind of coalition momentum is in continuum towards anything that you're doing before anything else, because this creates a harmonization within the organization. And the other thing is really, if you want to co-create with the people, if you really want these people to be decisive on what happens and how it happens, make sure that you have created not only a clear vision, but you have created a story out of this clear vision. Make sure that this change story for the vision is obvious and it very much goes for the brain, the heart, and the hands, because only then it can appeal to the people and can be sustainable for the whole change. I wanted to share these practical things for our listeners.
It's really helpful. Renzi, jump in.
Yeah, I just want to say, I think we also have to acknowledge the fact that HR people are also employees. Business leaders are also employees. So whatever people initiatives, whatever people strategy you're putting in place, make sure that you are part of it, that you consume it, that you participate in it. If not, one thing that I have done also in the past, where they put in place the people strategy for the organization, but at the same time, they created a very, very specific strategy on people development as well as engagement and well-being for HR. You're talking about 15,000 15,000 employee organization, and there's about 150 HR people. So the CHR at that time, we worked together in putting in place that people strategy for HR, so that they know there is a program for them if they don't want to, not that they cannot use the other people strategy, but they know it's a dedicated support for them if they feel they have a very unique problem. But also at the same time, as HR professionals, especially if you're working in large organizations, know that it is a community. I like what you said there, Francesca, because in the eyes of the people, employees, they don't care if you're HR services. They don't care if you're talent acquisition, learning and development, compensation and benefits. For them, you are HR. When they complain about compensation and benefits, they're not talking about, oh, it's not me. You are HR. So they're also complaining about you. So it's in your business to really make sure that you protect the entire community. So it's in your best interest to understand what are the pains, how can you help, how can you support, whether technically or also behaviorally, your colleagues within the HR community. Because at the end of the day, any people problem is HR problem. And there's no better support than people who understand what we go through. It's your HR community who will support you in the end.
Yeah, I love that so much. I'll add, in the spirit of pragmatism, 2 things I think about with change. And one of the things I love about Hacking HR is we're really comfortable as a group challenging the norms and, turning some of the HR philosophies of old on their head. And so I remember when I started in this profession, the first employee focus group I did, someone said, "We've curated a list for you, and don't worry. The naysayers, the unhappy, the disengaged, they're not coming." So I've got this, scrubbed up best version of, well, that's not very helpful. That's the way you do things in an echo chamber. So, I believe, like, bring me the disenfranchised, bring me the person who's going to complain the most about this change. And as soon as appropriate, I want them part of this team. I want to hear what they want to say. I want to maybe discuss what we're going to do and get their feedback. Because if you can get a convert from the person for whom this change is, will be the naysayer, could be a blocker, and you can make an advocate and an ally out of that person, you will have far better adaptation of your change. The other thing I'd really, suggest that we think about is, and Wayne talked about it a little, I've been talking about Agile HR for many years. Anna and I were on a Hacking HR panel together about Agile HR, but bringing in thinkers who are not from our own team. So we like to think that, the work we do is the exclusive province of those of us who've been in the profession or gone to school for it or attended classes or all of the above. And yes, but no. There are so many, what we do is practiced by so many leaders and peoples and people, and done by employees, that some of the best work I've done, I've put it out there and had a real life employee with no experience HR look at it. And trust me, the result is much better. Similarly on my own team, I'm an advisor to 2 startups where I have earlier stage individuals who are new in their career as the 1-person HR team, and I am their advisor. And I think I've done some of my best work in that partnership because I'm bringing my experience and a book of plays, and they are bringing just a fresh reality and fresh eyes. And when you blend those 2 together, I know that our outcomes have just been fantastic, certainly rooted in the very real work that we do of our craft, but also with people who are just experiencing as an employee. And when you put that together, it's a really special alchemy.
I love that. Charmaine, yeah, please jump in.
Yeah. Everyone had some really awesome points. I wanted to start with something that Anna shared because I think it's really important and something that I like to make sure we bring up on all these panels, because not everyone has a robust team around them, right? Some people are HR teams of 1, they're HR teams of 2, and that can feel very overwhelming when all these things are happening and you're doing all the pieces. So what are the tools available to that person, right? Are there resources, whether that's a local council that the community offers, that the city or state or region of the world that you offer, that you reside in offers, that could be that partner. Sometimes for someone, maybe that is AI, right? And I know there's compliance and all those pieces there, but it's really important to acknowledge that some people really are teams of 1, right? So when we talk about the communication strategy, when we talk about all these pieces, that's great, but they may not have those resources, right? And I know that Anna had mentioned that. So what are the ways that they can start looking at the support systems that they can get, whether that's internally, do they need to, does the organization have the dollars to bring in a consultant even temporarily that could help teach them, hey, when you're starting a plan, any comms, any initiative, here are some things to think about. Here's a framework that they can then kind of follow and just model, and that gets repeated. And Zoran, she shared, one thing I always say is, like, every business problem is a people problem, right? It ties right back. So how do you ensure that your business problems are being addressed? You address your people problems. And that always comes down to, what are you communicating? When are you communicating? How are you communicating? And more importantly, what are you communicating, right? We also have to give credit to what stage is someone at, right? And are we doing it? You mentioned your kids, Zoe. I always think, is it age appropriate, right? So is it appropriate for the audience where they're understanding? And to Francesca's point, I love what you're talking about in terms of bringing other people in. That is something that for me, when I was coming up in HR, changed the game. Putting it out to the employees. Look at this. We're going to launch this initiative. And what I talked to my teams about then was we need to build our ambassador base. Because when you have employees involved in what's happening and you're sharing with them, they are not only invested in it, when somebody else poo-poos it and it launches, they're going to say, oh no, you don't even have to do anything. You get to sit back because you're ambassadors, right? I call them the flash mob people. You teach them the section of the dance. And then by the time everyone's doing the dance because you've taught it in sections, that is the thing that we need to consider. Who are our advocates and who are going to be our ambassadors? And we can't hold that to our chest. And even within HR, because I know we create our own silos sometimes, we also have to stop thinking that our department understands better. Like, oh, L&D sees the bigger. No, we're all supposed to be doing this together. There are different components of this. You know, if you go to a doctor, yes, they're a doctor, but you're going to go to the specialist for what's wrong. That doesn't mean that another specialist is not still a doctor, right? So we have to think of it's the parts that are coming together to make the whole instead of the separatism that we do, because that separatism that sometimes happens with HR is what the organization is feeling. And that's the very thing that's working against us. Empowerment comes through education, and empowered people innovate and iterate.
That's great. I love that. That's awesome. I think that's so telling. I know we're almost at the end of our time together now. And I feel like I have like 100 more questions, but given where we are, I would love just to do a quick speed round. What's the one thing you want the people to take away from this? What's the one thing you want folks to focus on as they think about next year? So I'm going to go right across my screen. Renzi, let's start with you.
Maybe I'll just say something. The future is work is human-centered, not just AI. Okay. Make sure that whether you go embarking on an HR transformation, it's not just about the change. Don't just focus on the change. It's about creating a better future for your people. So focus on the experience.
Love that. Francesca, what would you add?
Yeah, the answers to your change are within. They're within you, they're within your team, and hopefully you heard a lot of passion around. They're just in the greater organization as well.
That's great. Wayne, what would you say?
I would say continuous learning, embracing a continuous learning mindset, upskill your teams in agile and AI and digital competencies, adopt a test and learn approach. You know, we don't get it perfect the first time. We want to be able to kind of learn from our mistakes and focus on cross-functional collaboration, you know, breaking down those silos. Those are the things that I would recommend.
Beautiful. Anna, what about you?
I would like to emphasize very much that you really need to build, in order to build, you really need to design first. You really need to have a good thought out of how you're going to do things, for whom, how, what, and then start really implementing. A lot of times we dash into doing things in real life as well, without having thought out the details and how this is going to impact aspects of our life. Same way, we have not thought out how it's going to affect the aspects of the organizational life, and that is everything. I would like very much to emphasize: design before you start doing things. Design every detail. Have a framework, for God's sake.
That's great. And Charmaine, what about you?
Yeah, two things come up. One, change your view if you want a different perspective, right? And again, I get that from my nephew. He comes over, he's like, oh, look at this thing. It's under the countertop. I'm taller. I wouldn't have seen it, right? So that's something that we have to think about. Change. We have to be willing to change our view if we want a different perspective. And then the last thing, to quote the great Manola Jack, who's also part of this Hacking HR community, go agile, not fragile. A lot of times we're so stuck in our ways. That is what is causing us to be fragile. So we want to be agile, not fragile.
These are amazing, amazing little nuggets. Thank you. What a great way to start the morning and the evening and the afternoon, no matter where you are. Thank you so much to our panelists. I really appreciate it. I hope everybody who attended learned something. And, you know, one of the things I would echo here is you're not alone. this work is hard and we are all in it with you. And so sometimes it can feel like nobody gets it, but there are a lot of people out here who get it and are eager to help and partner. So attend more of these sessions, lean into connecting with folks in similar roles, and we can do this work if we do it together. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And thank you so much, panelists. This was excellent.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Have a great day.